Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. We'll be going over Leetcode problem number 1084, which is Sales Analysis 3. When we first look at the problem, we'll see that we're given two tables, one named Product and the other named Sales. The two tables have one common column, which is Product ID. We'll see here and here. And then the other columns aren't in common, so we'll see that moving forward, we're more than likely going to be using that column to compare the two tables. We'll go down to the prompt and see we're supposed to write an SQL query that reports the products that were only sold in the first quarter of 2019, that is between 2019-0101 and 2019-0331. And this is inclusive, so that's just going to limit down how we're going to select those dates. And then we can return the table in any order, so no order by statements are needed. So we can just start by laying out our general select statement. So go down to the test case, we see that we're wanted to return the product ID and product name. So we'll do select product ID and then also product name. Then we can scroll up. We'll see that the product table includes both of those, so that we can just do from product. Then now we're going to have to get into how we're actually going to go about selecting this data. So we want only those things sold within the first quarter. So if things are sold in the first quarter and outside of the first quarter, then they shouldn't be selected. If they aren't sold at all, they shouldn't be selected. And if they're sold outside of the first quarter, we also don't want to select those. We want products that were only sold within that first quarter. So how we can do that is just do a select statement from the sales table. And then we want the items where the sell date is between that quarter. And we kind of want to avoid those products because if we can select from products that are not within that separate select statement, we're going to avoid most of the issues of selecting things that are in the first quarter, but as well as outside of it, which is a common problem whenever you're having something where products could be sold outside of the time frame, but also within the time frame, because some select statements just won't filter out that kind of case without multiple other qualifiers. So in this case, we're just gonna do where, and then product ID is the column name that they have in common, so we're going to use that here. So where product ID, and then we're going to say not in, and then we're wanting to select all of the products that are outside of that range. So if we do this, select, and then we only care about product ID here because that's the only thing we're going to be comparing it to. So we're going to do select product ID. And then this time we're going to do select from the sales table because that's where our sell dates are, which is how we're going to qualify whether the item was sold within that first quarter or not. So select product ID from sales, and then we're going to do where sell date. And with this, we're going to be working with a date, so we can do between. And between is kind of like in, where you're going to say you only want things that meet a certain criteria. And between is just going to allow you to put in two different datas. And then if something is between those two data, it will get returned. In this case, we're going to use two different dates. So we're going to do where sell date between, and we're going to do the dates it's given because the between operator is inclusive, so we don't have to worry about this inclusive part. So we're going to say between and then quote our dates because that's just how it has to work within SQL to tell it's a date. So with between 2019 01 and then you also have to have an and with between, just because it's going to tell your statement that you want to compare between these two dates. And then we're going to put in our second date, which is 2019 0331. So if we run this, where cell date between, so we want to do outside of this. So where cell date not between. So what this is going to do is it's going to select every product ID that was not within this time period. So if we run this, we'll see that it does satisfy this test case. The only problem is with this is we're going to have to add one more thing, and it's a very subtle thing. So this select statement here comes into a problem whenever the product table contains more products than were sold within the sales table. Because in that case, those would also not be selected out, so the product ID would not be within this data set. So we would still return that product ID even though it wasn't sold within that time frame. So how we can get around this and still use this current setup is we're just going to use an AND statement just to give this last little identification. So we're going to have to do AND product ID. And then now we're going to do in, and then another select statement. So we're going to do select product ID from sales. And this is actually all we're going to need for the second select statement. Because what we're trying to accomplish here is saying that the item had to have been sold, but it can't be outside of these two dates. Before we added this section, it would just say, oh, something from this table is not sold between those two dates in this table. But now it's going to say it has to have been sold, and it has to have been sold between those two dates in order to qualify to be returned. So now if we run this, we'll see that it again satisfies the test case, but then moving forward, it will satisfy all test cases because it will have to be within the sales table and it will have to be in the sales table between those two dates only. So this was my solution to Leetcode problem number 1084, which is Sales Analysis 3. This just seems the most straightforward to me. So if you would have solved this in a different manner, please leave that in the comments below and I'll get back to you. And then if you found this helpful, please like and subscribe, and that way you won't miss any more problems moving forward. I'd like to thank you for stopping by today, and I'll see you in the next one.